Hello, folks, and welcome back to Canton, Ohio, Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium, home of the 2024 OHSAA State Finals for the wonderful sport of football. 2 games in the book. We still have 5 left to go as we welcome you to the OHSAA Tailgate Show as we get ready to start and kick off this Division III state championship game. Jackson Lightcap alongside Matthew Pennington, the entire TKDS Sports Network crew on tap here today. Matt, 2 games are already in the books. Avon state champions for Division II last night against Anderson, and we just saw Marion Local with a record-setting win over Hillsdale in the early morning contest. Now the stage is set. We're going to get into talking a lot about the Division III state final coming up here in just a little bit between Bishop Watterson and Toledo Central Catholic.
Yeah, definitely, at least so far, been a fun weekend. I mean, if you were able to tune in and watch the game on Thursday night, unfortunately, Jackson and I weren't able to see it, but you want to talk about amazing football weather, especially in the Cleveland area. I mean, snow on the field, players playing through the snow, playing through all 4 quarters, came down to the last play of the game. It was an incredible game Thursday night, and then Marion Local breaking records, breaking their own records that they set here over the past couple seasons to win their 4th straight state championship game. The seniors of that team, of Marion Local, have not lost a football game. So they've won 64 straight football games, and they had a chance back in 2020 to try to continue in what would have been an insane state championship run. It would have been about 7 or 8 in a row, but they lost to New Bremen, another MAC school, that won the state championship game that year. So nothing against Marion Local. 64 games in a row is a massive mark, and it's going to be tough for any team ever in the state of Ohio. I would say probably in the next 50 years to even come close to 64 straight wins and 4 straight state championship games. So Marion Local, completely different animal compared to some of the teams that we've seen here in Canton.
We're getting into talking about that Division VII state championship game that we saw early this morning in just a couple of minutes. Matt, let's start off last night, though, with the Division II state championship game. We have 2 games to recap. It's the first tailgate show of the day. Lucky us. Of course, yesterday, Avon winning their first state football championship in school history, taking down the Anderson Raptors from Cincinnati by a final score of 20-13. Matt, you already mentioned it was football weather outside. It was snowy. It was a wonderful sight here in Canton, Ohio. And then you also take a look at the game on the field. It was a good one. Avon jumped out to a 14-0 lead. Anderson came all the way back. Avon scored late in the 4th quarter. Anderson had a chance to march the football down the field to try to tie or even go for the win. They came up short. Avon and the Eagles clinching their first football state championship in school history. Congratulations to Avon and Anderson. When you look at the Raptors, they've gotten one step farther each and every year. You go back a couple years ago, ended in the regional final. Go back last year, they lost in the state semifinal. Now runners up. If that staircase continues, it could be another successful season for the Raptors. But again, Avon, you take a look at the road that they ended up going to get here, beating Hoban in the state semifinal. It was a well-deserved, a well-rounded team, and the better team won on the field last night.
Yeah, and that's one thing. You talked about Anderson, their ascent, and how good they have been over the past couple seasons. You can say the same for Avon. They've continued to grow. They've continued to get better. They've continued to build, and it showed itself. First state championship for Avon in school history, playing against a team that has been to the state championship multiple times. Anderson, a team that has won a couple state championships, a team that, as you mentioned, continuing to ascend like Avon has over the past couple seasons. It also helped both Avon and Anderson that we didn't have a Massillon or a Hoban or a TCC, the team we're going to see in the Division III state championship game. They won the Division II state championship game back in 2022. Kind of happy that both Avon and Anderson, yes, Avon had to take down one of those teams. Anderson had a chance of playing against Massillon, but Big Walnut took down Massillon before Anderson had a chance to face off against the Tigers. But both teams, it seems like with how they have improved, with how they've gotten better, sky's the limit for both of those teams over the next couple seasons.
And, of course, in the early matchup, Marion Local taking down Hillsdale. It was a lot to a little, 74-0. Marion Local wins their 4th consecutive state championship and their 15th state title in the sport of football since the year 2000. Since the turn of the century, Marion Local has been a powerhouse in some of these lower divisions. And, of course, we've already mentioned it was a record-setting day. Well, most points in a quarter, most points in a half, most points in a game, largest margin of victory, most touchdowns in a game. They also tied the all-time state championship record with 11 touchdowns in that game. When you look at the Flyers, 64-0, they're on a 64-game winning streak. The senior class, who is going to be graduating this May, has never tasted defeat in varsity football.
It's crazy. I've heard people joke about the fact that we should put Marion Local inside of the Big Ten with how good they have been playing over the past couple seasons. And like you said, it hasn't even just been the past couple seasons. I mentioned losing to New Bremen, a MAC school that has won a few state championships as of recently here in Canton. Losing to them in the playoffs, New Bremen goes to win a state title. Before 2020, Marion Local, I think, was 2017, 2018, 2019 state champions. So they had won a ton of football to win state titles. And then you take a look at the other thing that we saw Marion Local do when they were in the Division 6 state championship game a few years ago. Talk about their 64-0 record right now that they're on. They took down Kirtland, who was and had an opportunity to take down Delphos St. John's 57-game winning streak if they were to beat Marion Local in that state championship game that we saw them play against each other in a few years ago. So Marion Local goes ahead and takes away Kirtland's chances, who we will see play tomorrow against Coldwater, another MAC school. But Marion Local beats Kirtland to end their win streak, which could have been a state record, to go ahead and set a state record this season in most consecutive wins.
Hey, Matt, I have the final stats right here from that Marion Local and Hillsdale game. How about this? 17 first downs for Marion Local compared to Hillsdale, who only had 4. The total yards of offense, 345 to 74. Hillsdale turned over the football 5 times. And also on top of that, when you look at the rushing yards, 248 for Marion Local, just 2 for Hillsdale. That just goes to show you. Now, keep in mind, Hillsdale, it's no walk in the park. They're playing in the state championship for a reason. They were a one-loss team coming into today. They finished their season 14-2. This is one of the top teams in the state of Ohio, hence why they're playing in the state championship game. And Marion Local took it to them, winning. It was their largest margin of victory through the entire postseason.
It was their biggest margin of victory of any game the entire year. And that's the other thing when it comes to this Marion Local team. It's one thing, they're from our neck of the woods, Jackson. We talked about Marion Local consistently throughout the year with how good the team is and how good just the chemistry and the culture there is there in Maria Stein for Marion Local. It's safe to say when you take a look at what they were able to do, the fact that they only ended up putting up 340-something odd yards of offense, but put up 74 points in the football game. There's one thing that should tell everybody. Yes, the offense is really good at Marion Local, but that defense is elite. 0 points allowed in the state championship. Of their 4 that they've won in a row, 13 total points allowed in their last 4 state championship wins. That is an insane stat.
And there's a lot of people out there that I know talk about 10:30 a.m. kickoff time for the Division 6 game tomorrow, Division 7 game today, and especially that Friday slot because, remember, it's still technically a work day. There's a lot of families, there's a lot of fans that still have to go to work. They have to watch this game on TV, which, by the way, you can watch on Spectrum TV here in just a little while, the Division 3 kickoff. But there's a lot of people who can't come to these games, can't miss these games. Not with Marion Local. Matt, you and I got to the hotel late last night, and it seemed like the entire town of Maria Stein was in that hotel lobby partying it up right before the early wake-up call to go cheer on their team for victory. The Marion Local fan base, they're special. There is none other. I've said it multiple times. There's not many other, if any, other fan base that is better than the Marion Local Flyers fan base. They're one of the key reasons why they have so much success on the field is because of the support in the community.
And yeah, I mean, it's one thing, like I said, Jackson, I come from that neck of the woods. We've seen and we've talked about Marion Local. I mentioned jokingly back in Week 7, we should just give them the Division 7 state championship game. And they proved why that should have been the case back around Week 7. They were crushing everybody. And the thing you also talk about, it's a work day. I don't think there was probably any businesses opened in Maria Stein. We talk about the community support, talking about how everybody gets behind this Flyers team. I would assume most businesses were probably closed in Maria Stein because of Marion Local being in this state championship game. I mean, you and I have covered a few Marion Local games. I've heard stories of weddings happening during football, and everyone has their phone up with the game on and watching the game during weddings. That goes to show how committed the community is to football. And it's, like we've said, it's just the culture at Marion Local. They pair seniors with freshmen to develop the freshmen, have them build that team camaraderie that we see Marion Local have every single year. It starts with the freshmen. It starts with the seniors grouping up with the freshmen. They carpool together. They pretty much end up becoming brothers, essentially, which is what the game of football is. It's a brotherhood out there on the field. Marion Local takes that to the next step. They have freshmen paired with seniors. Those seniors will carpool the freshmen to practices, to school, everywhere. It goes to show the culture at Marion Local, and it's why Marion Local, I would say, probably one of the best teams in the entire state of Ohio.
Matt, one thing you mentioned, if you are in Maria Stein, everything's probably closed. If there's one place in this entire country, if you're driving through, you don't want to run out of gas in Maria Stein because there's no gas station open. There's nothing open. They're all here in Canton cheering on the Marion Local Flyers. Matt, I think I'd rather run out of gas in Arizona in the middle of the desert than in Maria Stein right now. Guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to start prepping and previewing the Division III state title game that is set to kick off here in just a little bit over an hour at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Toledo Central Catholic, Bishop Watterson getting set to do battle and battle it out for Division III state championship. We'll be right back. Welcome back here to Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. Jackson Lightcap alongside Matthew Pennington. Division II, the Division VII state championship games are done, and they are in the books for the 2024 season. We still have 5 left, and Matt kicking off here in just about an hour live outside the stadium will end up being our Division III state championship game. Bishop Watterson, Toledo Central Catholic, 2 of the top teams, a absolute juggernaut of programs going head-to-head for the second consecutive year at Tom Benson Hall of Fame for a state championship.
I'd say one of these programs 110% fits the bill of a juggernaut. The other team is building themselves up to being a juggernaut, that being Bishop Watterson. You take a look at what they've been able to do. 5-10 years ago, there was talks of making the playoffs. The team wanted to make the playoffs, but they were a struggling team. Past couple seasons, they have been on fire. Same can be said for TCC. They've won their last 2 state championship games here at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium. They won the Division II state championship game back in 2022. They won last year against Bishop Watterson in the state championship game for Division III. So it's a rematch of last year's Division III state championship game. One of these teams is going to want to obviously come out on top. You've got TCC looking to go for 3 straight state championship games or state championship wins. You got Bishop Watterson trying to win one for the first time in quite some time. 2010 was the last time they won a state championship.
And Matt, you bring up an interesting point because if anybody out there recalls, Bishop Watterson and the Eagles, they, as you mentioned, Matt, early 2010s, they had some struggles. Of course, they let go of their former head coach. They hire Brian Kennedy. And Brian Kennedy, although it looks now, it is 100% looking like it's the correct hire for Bishop Watterson. Remember, he started 2-9 in his first 11 games at the helm as the Eagles head coach. He started 2-9. He is now all the way up to 64-30, and that includes a 29-2 overall record over the last couple of years. Brian Kennedy has done an incredible job implementing his culture. And Matt, the first couple of years, again, as we just mentioned, not that great for Brian Kennedy at Bishop Watterson. But there is a bit of a time frame where when you switch from head coach to head coach, and you see this anywhere, and we've talked about it so many times in the past as well, that it's going to be a drop-off. You have to implement your culture. You have to implement your playbook. You have to implement your scheme. You have to get players trusting you. You have to get players believing in that as well. It takes time. It takes time not just with Brian Kennedy and Bishop Watterson. It takes time in the NFL. It takes time at the college football level, high school. It doesn't matter where it happens, but that culture is implemented. It's back to a winning program. Bishop Watterson here in Canton for the second consecutive year.
Yeah, and the one thing you have to look at when you take a look at Brian Kennedy as the head coach for Bishop Watterson, like you mentioned, 2-9 to start for his first 11 games. 94 total games as a head coach at Bishop Watterson. Since going 2-9, 62-21. That's all you need to know about how good Brian Kennedy has turned around Bishop Watterson and turned around the culture in Bishop Watterson and for the Eagles, like I said, 2-9 to start. Since then, 62-21. That is a very, very, very impressive record, especially when you start off as slow as you did. You go 2-9 for your first 11 games, and you're sitting at 64-30 at this point.
And then you take a look at the Fighting Irish of Toledo Central Catholic. Well, they have a Hall of Fame head coach on their sideline, Greg Dempsey. 266 wins, 54 losses. He's won a state title game in 2023, 2022, 2014, 2012, 2005. They ended up losing in 2015. So you have both of these teams in program history. They've been able to get to Canton. You have one team, Toledo Central Catholic, that's been able to pull away 5. You have Bishop Watterson that has lost 4 here. So that's one of the narratives, and I know that the Eagles are going to want to change on that field here in just a couple of hours.
And yeah, like I said, when it comes to Bishop Watterson, developing themselves to being one of those juggernauts in Division III, to being one of those teams that when it comes down to this point of the postseason, whether it's state semifinal or here in Canton or wherever the state championship game is being held, Bishop Watterson is trying to build themselves into a team that, it's not surprising. We're seeing Bishop Watterson here in Canton for the past 2 seasons. It's not surprising seeing them make it to the state semifinals. It's not that odd to see them making it this far. Because you take a look at this team's state championships, 2002, 2010. It's been a while since Bishop Watterson has won a state championship. You go and look at their runner-up years, 1972, 1999, 2001, and then last year. So there has been a long gap of time between Bishop Watterson back in the late 90s, early 2000s, early 2010s, being a team that is in that conversation of, it's not too surprising seeing the Eagles make it this far. There was some downtime, but now we're getting back to that point where Bishop Watterson is a team that, all right, they're back in Canton. Not too surprising seeing them back here. And that's what Brian Kennedy wants to do with this team. Wants to develop players, wants players to obviously go on and play football at the next level, but also, especially after we keep mentioning that 2-9 start, it's awesome seeing this team now become one of the powerhouses in Division III.
And Matt, let's go back a year ago when both these teams met here in Canton for the Division III state title game. It was Toledo Central Catholic that got that win 27-7. It was a good game, but it really came down to the rushing numbers. 247 yards on the ground in that game for Toledo Central Catholic, -6 from Columbus Bishop Watterson. That's going to have to change, and of course the Eagles, they have an incredible running back this season with trying to find it with Zach Weber, 192 carries, 1,733 rushing yards, 23 touchdowns. This is a run-first team. That's going to have to be a difference maker in this game today.
Yeah, especially when you take a look at how much they struggled last year when it came to running the football. I mean, you take a look at Bishop Watterson last year, 20 carries, 68 total yards. They've got a lot better of a rushing offense this year than they did a season ago. But the other thing you got to think about when it comes to TCC, talk about Bishop Watterson getting their run game going in this game today. The defense has also got to find a way to stop Tyler Morgan on the other side of the football for TCC, because if they can't, he was TCC's second back last year when it came to rushing yards and attempts in this game. He's been a workhorse this season. He has been an intimidating player to line up on the opposite side of the field against. He is a player that Bishop Watterson on defense has to find a way to stop. Otherwise, we could see another 200-plus yard rushing game for TCC against Bishop Watterson in a state championship game.
One of the more interesting factors in this game is, yes, these two teams met just a year ago here in this state championship game for the Division III title. there's not many returners, Both teams have new quarterbacks. We'll get to that here in just a couple of minutes. Both teams have newer running backs, expanding their roles or even entering new roles. Both teams have a lot new pieces on the defense. Although it is the same two teams, just a year apart from each other, it's not necessarily the same two teams on the field from what we saw last season.
And yeah, one piece to TCC that is going to have a lot of impact, one player that is going to have a lot of impact in this game, talking about Bishop Watterson being more of a run-heavy team. If they ever decide to throw the football, you better not throw it to Victor Singleton Jr. He has been incredible so far this season. You take a look at some of the colleges. He's only a junior this year, so he'll be back next year for TCC unless he goes somewhere else to play football in his senior year. Offers from Ohio State, offers from Tennessee, Texas A&M, Oregon, some of the top teams in the entire country, especially when it comes to cornerback production. One of the best cornerbacks in the entire state of Ohio is going to be on the field in this game, and Victor Singleton. He is a player that if Bishop Watterson decides that they want to try to go away from the run-heavy offense and decide to throw the football, they cannot be throwing it his way. Chance at interceptions, chances at turnovers, chances at passes being batted down. Victor Singleton is going to put whatever receiver he is on in this game on an island for the entire 4 quarters.
Now, you bring up Victor Singleton for Toledo Central Catholic. On the flip side, you have junior quarterback Drew Belisari, 123 of 204 passing this season, 2,017 yards. How about this, Matt? 29 touchdowns compared to 5 interceptions. Yes, this Bishop Watterson team loves to put the ball on the ground first. They love to lean on Weber in the run game, but this team is not afraid to throw the ball when they need it. Obviously, they don't want to be one-dimensional today. But if they do turn out, they can't run the football just like last year in the state championship game. They can rely on that junior quarterback who has proven this season he can rise to the occasion and win football games.
And yeah, that's the other good thing for Belisari so far this season. You talk about, and you mentioned the passing yards and the passing numbers that he's had so far this season. 29 touchdowns through the air is an incredible number. He's also got 13 rushing touchdowns on the season. He is talk about players that you got to watch out for. Victor Singleton on the defensive side for TCC is a player that Bishop Watterson's offense is going to have to pay attention to, and they're going to have to know where he is every single play. Belisari is going to have to know where he is every single play. Pre-snap, he's going to have to know where Victor Singleton is on the field. The defense is also going to have to know where Belisari is wanting to go with the football and where he is on the field, because you mentioned the 2,000 passing yards, almost 30 touchdowns through the air, 5 interceptions. 13 touchdowns on the ground, 670 rushing yards for the quarterback. He's had an incredible season for Bishop Watterson so far this year. He is a player that, if you're TCC's defense, you got to find a way to stop.
Now for Toledo Central Catholic, their quarterback position, Isaiah Fox, he's not listed as the starter today. Remember, he's missed the last couple of games due to an injury. It's been Ali Baydown who has been the man who has stepped up, who's risen to the occasion. He started the last 3 games now, and also on top of that, he has filled in. He's gotten plenty of playing time this season. 52 of 98 passing, 804 yards, 10 touchdowns, 1 interception. If there's any form of a second-string quarterback I want to have starting this game, it's Baydown for Toledo Central Catholic.
And yeah, when you take a look at his stats, the only thing that jumps off the page is not good is his completion percentage, but he's a backup quarterback who hasn't seen a ton of playing time so far this season. And then you take a look at the rest of his stats, you go 52 of 98, that's not the best completion percentage, but 800 yards through the air, 10 touchdowns, only 1 interception as a backup coming in for a very, very talented Isaiah Fox, who is not, like you said, not listed to be the starter for this game, so it's possible we don't see Isaiah Fox play in the game today. But Isaiah Fox, 1,600 passing yards, 15 touchdowns so far this season. He has been an incredible quarterback so far this season. But Baydown, like you said, if there's any quarterback, or if there's any team that wants to, or if there's any team that can be happy about their backup quarterback, it's TCC and what Baydown has done so far this season.
Matt, real quick, let's pause. Let's take a step back. Let's take a look at how Bishop Watterson and how Toledo Central Catholic, their road to Canton. Obviously, Bishop Watterson a little upset after last year's state championship loss. Well, they got back in the weight room. They got bigger. They got stronger. They got faster. They got a lot better. Hence why they're right back here in Canton for the 2nd consecutive year. And it showed that this is a team that could make a deep postseason run, if not make it all the way back to Canton. It showed all the way back in week 1 when they won on the road at Big Walnut. Keep in mind, Big Walnut was a state semifinalist as well. So they beat Big Walnut. Not only beat them, they shut them out 20-0. The schedule that Bishop Watterson has had to play, able to get all the way down here. They beat Steubenville in the regional final. They beat London 56-21, a game where they had 28 unanswered points off of 4 forced fumbles in that second quarter a week ago to get to this point. Playing in Canton, this is a Bishop Watterson team that is averaging 41 points per game, allowing 6 points per game. They've had 13 running clocks this season. The domination has been at a continuation this season for Bishop Watterson and the Eagles.
Yeah, and the one game that I look at, obviously there's a lot of games when you take a look at the overall season for the Eagles so far this year. 13 running clocks is an insane number to have. Having 10 in a 16-game season is an incredible stat to have. So to have 13 of your 15 games that you've played so far this year have a running clock be a factor in this game, that is an insane number of games. To be that, you have to be 30 points ahead of your opponent to have the accelerated clock take place and have the running clock come into effect. And with the schedule that Bishop Watterson has had so far this year, it's insane. It would have been insane if they had 8 or 9 running clocks throughout this season, but 13. I'm taking a look at their schedule. That win against London, yes, London, when it comes down to the Central Buckeye Conference and how they play football, they are explosive on offense. Defense is always comes to question when it comes to CBC teams, especially when it comes to making it this deep in the postseason. But 28 unanswered points early in that game, and then the other game that I'm looking at that, to me, shows how good this Bishop Watterson team is. Their win against Division II Harrison, 51-14 was the final score of that game. Harrison, the Wildcats are a very, very good Division II team out of the Cincinnati area, and they crushed them. That tells you all you need to know about the Eagles so far this season.
Matt, you said something, but you got to give some more respect to the CBC, brother. I mean, Indian Lake was in the state semifinals. I think that they have something to say as well. But no, and then
they probably don't like me that much right now, especially since we cover them.
You turn the page. You talk to Toledo Central Catholic. Toledo Central Catholic, they've played 5 teams out of the state of Ohio this season, went 4-1 against them. This is a team that is averaging 32 points per game, 11 points allowed per game. When you look at Toledo Central Catholic, Matt, the biggest thing to me stands out, and it's almost a complete 180 from what we saw with Bishop Watterson. Remember, Bishop Watterson, the 13 running clocks throughout the season. How about Toledo Central Catholic? 4 one-point victories this season. If this game is close, advantage automatically to the Fighting Irish.
And yeah, you talk about those 4 one-point games, including the state semifinal game that they scored in the last minute to go up 7-6. They scored in the last minute of the state semifinal against Ursuline to get themselves here to Canton to face off against Bishop Watterson in the state championship. Tells you all you need to know about the flip-flop from both of these teams a season ago. TCC was dominant. They made that switch down to Division III. Once they made that switch down to Division III, you kind of got the feeling that TCC was going to run away with the Division III state championship game last year. And then you take a look.
Look who's joining us, Matt.
Hey, finally, we got some more. We got some more people out here.
Let's talk Toledo.
Toledo Central Catholic.
Am I not on?
Here you go.
Right there.
There you go.
Oh,
Now you're live.
ruined my big entrance. I had a good line,
You know,
too.
I saw you slithering up.
Well, I didn't know I was
like,
supposed
so
to.
should I pause and go to a quick commercial break to allow him on? And
I don't know.
The entrance was perfect except for the mic.
Yeah, the mic would have been just spot on.
Hey, we got you on here. That's the good thing.
That's perfect. Yeah. So what are we talking?
Toledo Central Catholic.
Yep.
Currently, we're talking about their road to Canton.
Yeah.
The 4 one-point losses, certainly big. You look at Bishop Watterson, 13 running clocks this season. Toledo Central Catholic, they've had to win a lot more closer games. Could be an advantage from today.
Yeah, it's interesting looking at last year, right, and then looking at this year. These two teams, obviously this is a rematch here, but kind of taking different routes. Central, returning state champion, but has had close games coming up. Barely got in. You know, last week had to win in a last-second touchdown. Watterson, on the other hand, has had multiple running clocks, double-digit victories. So it's a funny way to get to the same exact place we were last year. It'll be an interesting one. It's always, to me, it feels like always a dangerous Central team because they have so much experience in these games.
Yeah, Absolutely. Real quick, I beg your pardon. Shame on me. Where's my manners? Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Oh, I should have. Sorry, there's no. Hi, yeah.
That's on me. Shame on me. I have no manners.
Yeah.
Jackson, you gotta be better.
Dane
host.
Sonsenbacher. I did sports at Central Catholic, and now I'm calling some games upstairs.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
Dane, thank you for joining
Yeah.
us to talk Toledo Central Catholic.
Yep.
And Toledo Central Catholic, kind of looking ahead. We just talked about their road to get there. We've talked about some certain players to watch out for. Keys to success. What do we think today from Toledo Central Catholic? What are they going to have to do to pull out a victory?
Yeah. So when I was in Central Catholic 2005 state championship team. So that was my crew there. Same head coach though, so I kind of know how this group functions. It's a lot of the same staff. So they've had a couple injuries this year. They've had to replace the quarterback. They've had to win close games with guys that maybe weren't even starters on last year's team. And I think with Coach Dempsey and this bunch, they know this time of year, it's cold. You never know what you're going to get with weather. It always comes down to controlling the line of scrimmage and running the ball. I think if they can establish that, I think that's what they want to try to establish to give themselves the advantage. So I would be... I would fully expect watching this game to see them try to really establish that run game early.
And Matt, same question, but let's talk about Bishop Watterson. What does Bishop Watterson need to do today to clinch the Division III state title?
Same answer. Run the football and be efficient running the football, especially with it's not going to be as snowy down on the field like we saw last night for the Division II state championship game, but with how Bishop Watterson has run their offense so far this season, yes, they can throw the football. Yes, they have an elusive and an incredible quarterback when it comes to throwing and when it comes to running. But running the football is going to be the key to success, I think, for both of these teams in this game. Because whether there's an opportunity football goes out of bounds, maybe have a slick football at some point for a couple snaps throughout this game. That could cause some turnovers. That's another thing that both teams have to try to take advantage of. If a team's going to put the football on the ground, you've got to come up with it. Doesn't matter which side of the football you're on. If the offense fumbles it, defense, you got to try to get your hands on the football. Both of these teams, I think running the football, especially with how we saw TCC run the football against Bishop Watterson last year, I think running the football is going to be a key to success for both of these teams tonight.
Do you think, compared to last year, too, Watterson now has a better advantage because their quarterback is so mobile? Because it was a difference last year, right? Is that your quarterback last year for Watterson more of a pocket passer, but now that you've got a guy that can get it on the ground, is that just given a different dynamic? You think that helps?
It completely changes the way TCC's got to play defense against Bishop Watterson in this game, because you have to have somebody either – it doesn't have to be every single play, but someone has to keep an eye on Belisari every single snap throughout the night and throughout this game, because we talked about 13 rushing touchdowns on the season, 670 yards on the ground combined with 2,000 yards passing, 29 touchdowns through the air this season. Belisari has proved this year he can throw the football, he can run the football. Not something that TCC had to deal with last year in the state championship game. So that's going to be one thing that, at least defensively wise, for the Fighting Irish, they've got to find a way to keep Belisari they have to take one of his facets out of the game, whether it's throwing the football or whether it's his ability to run the football. One of those two, TCC's got to find a way to do it, find a way to stop it. And like I said earlier, Victor Singleton is a player that could have some of that impact in stopping the passing game for TCC on defense.
Now, I will go ahead and say this, and I'm also going to go on a different aspect you guys didn't even touch on. I'm looking outside right now. I'm looking at the flags. It is windy. It is not going to be an easy game for kickers. It's not going to be an easy game for special teams. How many times have we seen state championship games come down to a missed field goal or a missed PAT? That's going to be one of the dark horse candidates that's going to affect this game. The weather, the special teams in this one.
It always is. It seems to be like a sleeper in a lot of these games, especially at this point in the year when you've got teams that their talent, well, except for the game we just saw this morning, usually that talent level is so close that it's the little things. And a lot of times at the high school level, like how much time do you have to actually do the special teams practice? Everybody's so focused on the offense and defense that it can come down to those little mistakes. Even tougher in these conditions. I mean, catching punts is not fun regardless. Not fun in swirling cold wind. Those are games that can really flip the field. Those are plays that can really flip the field. So it's a great point, and it could very well be a factor.
Guys, One thing I want to touch base on real quick before we take another commercial break, and we're kind of prep what's coming up throughout the rest of the weekend as well. According to Tyler Segerman from WTOL, senior linebacker Dominic Spinazzi, he went out and said, "We win this one. This is the best class ever. This is a senior class, the class of 25 for Toledo Central Catholic, who has posted a 56-5 record since their freshman year, including 17 straight playoffs. They're looking for a three-peat. Now, if it's going down to school history, I can agree, but if it's state history, I think Marion Local and the Flyers may want to say something about that."
Yeah, it's state history. Clearly, we just saw the champs that were out there this morning. 64-0, I didn't know was possible. And clearly, it hasn't been until today. But, yeah, I think what he is saying, and for this Central Catholic team, yeah, you've been a part of a great run. I mean, this would be 3 in a row. They're going for their 3rd state championship. That's a lot of wins for these guys from their freshman year on. They've built a really impressive program over the years. So, I mean, one way or the other. So that's the Central side. But Waterson, they obviously have, one, a bone to pick from last year, but also a history of winning and some championship pedigree there.
And, yeah, they haven't won since 2010, so it's been a while since Bishop Waterson's been the winner in a state championship game, but it's happened. They've won it twice.
Yep.
They've been runners-up. They didn't want to be runners-up last year. They wanted to win the whole thing last year against TCC. They've got an opportunity to get revenge from a season ago. And like I said, it's going to come down to that run game. You talked about the weather. It's going to completely change the special teams aspect of the game. You can have a kicker that's money from 50 yards out who you might not trust kicking a 35-yard field goal with these windy conditions down on the field. Some kickers are automatic. The wind's not going to matter, but it's high school level football. You never know when it comes to kicking the football and punting the football as well. You just never know with these conditions down on the field. It's possible the weather can absolutely take this game a different direction than what everybody is expecting. But like I said, ground game for both of these teams has to be efficient in this game tonight.
Guys, let's move on. Game picks. We're moved left to right. Matt, I'll let you start it. Toledo Central Catholic or Bishop Waterson today?
I know Dane's not going to like me for this one. I went with Bishop Waterson in this game. Only reason I picked Bishop Waterson in this game is because of how good they have looked all season long. They've played some pretty tough competition. 13 running clocks so far this year. And then you take a look at TCC. It's the reason I picked TCC last year in this game. Bishop Waterson has looked dominant. TCC hasn't looked as dominant as we have seen them in years past. And as we saw them be a season ago, like you said, it's pretty much role reversals for these teams. Yep. They're in the same spot, both in the state championship game, but it's pretty much Bishop Waterson copied TCC, TCC copied Bishop Waterson from a season ago. That's the reason I'm going to pick the Eagles. 15-0 on the season, looking to have an undefeated season a full undefeated season for, I believe, the first time since the 1960s. I think that was the last time they had a full undefeated season from start to finish on the year. I think this is their opportunity to do it.
Yeah, I'm going to take Central Catholic, but that's just because I'm a homer and I was not going to pick against them. But every point you made is spot on. I mean, this Waterson team has looked so dominant this year. And they have kind of taken over that role of they are the dominant team walking into tonight. Central Catholic kind of knows I don't want to say limped in, but they kind of snuck their way in. So I think the one thing that Central has for them is there's a certain confidence when you're two-time state champ. So I do think Waterson has had the better year and has been dominant, and they will be definitely a scary opponent for the Irish, and I don't think the Irish are taking them lightly.
Bishop Waterson is the better football team. Bishop Waterson is angry after that Division III state title loss a year ago to Toledo Central Catholic. Bishop Waterson, ever since that loss a year ago, has dreamed for this moment to get their revenge in the state championship game. Do they get it done? No, they don't. Toledo Central Catholic is going to pull this one out, and the reason why I say that, 13 accelerated clocks for Bishop Waterson, 4 one-point victories for Toledo Central Catholic. That's a point that I've made multiple times in this show. This game's not going to be a running clock. This game is going to be close, and if it's close and it comes down to one possession, I trust Toledo Central Catholic to pull it out ahead of Bishop Waterson because they've been in that situation more often this season.
It's a great point. He's right.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm on an island over here.
We're going to take a break real quick. After these commercials, we'll come back, and we'll look ahead at the rest of the schedule for Canton in the 2024 OHSAA State Championship Games. Back here at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium, right outside the Pro Football Hall of Fame. No better place in the state of Ohio to host a state championship in the OHSAA state finals. And in fact, on Monday, the news was broken that the OHSAA and Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium signed another 3-year contract, which will extend the state final games here in Canton through the year 2026.
I mean, I've said it multiple times when it comes to the atmosphere that you get here at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium, the crowd size. In my eyes, when it comes to high school football state championships, this stadium is perfect. It is perfect. It is a long trip for some teams. I mean, we've got Moeller coming from Cincinnati. We've had Anderson came in from Cincinnati. So it's a long haul for some teams to make it up here to Canton, Ohio. But when it comes to the atmosphere, when it comes to the crowd size, when it comes to pretty much everything down on the field, in the stands, everywhere, everything, this spot, I think, is the best place for a state championship in the state of Ohio.
Absolutely. Let's take a look at the rest of the schedule. The Division I state title game will be played tonight. Olentangy Liberty, making their first trip here in school history, will take on Moeller, who is here for the first time since 2013. That should be a fun one. We're going to have another pregame tailgate show right before that game kicks off right here, 6:15 to 7 o'clock. Join Matt and I for that. And then, of course, tomorrow, action-packed day in the morning, Coldwater versus Kirtland, Ironton versus Liberty Center, and Indian Valley will take on Perkins in the late night primetime Division IV state title game. So when you take a look at it, Matt, still an action-packed schedule, but this Division III state title game, a lot of fans are excited, and we're just a couple minutes away from sending it upstairs for the OHSAA coverage of the game.
And yeah, it's safe to say, don't expect any other game throughout the remainder of these state championship games to look like the Marion local game we saw earlier on today. There's no other game that we are going to see throughout the remainder of this weekend, and hopefully I don't eat my own words on this. There should be no other game throughout the remainder of these last 5 games that we have here in Canton, Ohio, and at the Hall of Fame Stadium. There should be no other games that are played, and we see an outcome and a score like we saw in the Marion local game versus Hillsdale earlier on today. And the only reason for that is because it's Marion local. That's the only reason we saw it be 74-0. They were breaking their own records in that game. Multiple records broken, breaking their own records that they had set for Division VII state championship games last year. I don't expect any other game to be as lopsided, as one-sided as we saw in that Marion local game earlier on today. So expect a lot of great football throughout the remainder of this weekend.
Well, folks, it is about time to send it upstairs. Once again, you can watch the games live on Spectrum News 1, Spectrum TV. Make sure to watch it live there, or if you can't watch it and you just want to listen to the audio version, go to OHSAA.org to listen to the OHSAA radio network and the coverage of the Division III state title game between Toledo Central Catholic and Bishop Watterson. That game kicks off in about 30 minutes. Go upstairs and join them for the pregame. But alongside Matthew Pennington, I'm Jackson Lightcap, the entire TKDS Sports Network crew. We'll be back in just a little bit to prep the Division I state title game from 6:15 to 7 o'clock. We'll see you then.